Hey everyone, today I'll be running a quick tutorial on how I achieved this 2D splash look in AnimateCC and After Effects. I started off in After Effects where I created a white and black solid. I scaled up the black solid and moved the anchor point to the top and made sure it was centered, and then animated the rotation so the layer spins around. So to begin, we'll just start off by creating a new composition, making sure it's 1920 by 1080 and the frame rate is 25 frames a second. Cool, so we're just going to create two solids, one of them being white. So I'm just going to quickly create a white solid here. And then we're just going to create another one and make this one black. All right, cool. So with a black solid, we're just going to scale it up by just hitting S on the keyboard, the keyboard shortcut, scaling up to around there, that'll do, and then going up here and getting the anchor point and just moving it all the way up to the top. So when we move it around, that's going to be the main anchor, so it's going to rotate from that position. So we're just going to scale it down and center it into our scene. So to make sure that it is properly centered, we're just going to go to the left of the viewport and we're going to go down to proportional grid, just like that. And I'm just going to move this so it's as close to the center as possibly can be. So that's pretty close. All right, cool. We're just going to stick with that for the time being. Awesome. Now what we're going to do really quickly is just hit R on the keyboard and bring up the rotation of our object. We're just going to make it spin probably just once, so we're just going to set it to 360. Cool, and then if we just play it around, spins around. Cool, that's probably a little bit too fast, so we'll just rewind. Yep, that's it. So once we've got this base kind of spinny thing happening, what we're going to do is we're going to add a text layer. So we'll just go up here up to the top, create text layer, scale it up a little bit. So now that we have our text, what we're going to do is we're going to animate it. So we're going to drag it back down to the start and we are going to make this text white. So the reason why we're doing that is because when it goes across the black, it obviously becomes visible. So if we keep it black, when it goes all across the black, you won't be able to see it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to center up this bad boy. Make sure the anchor point is in the center and we're going to animate him. What we're going to do is we're just going to hit P on the keyboard and we're going to have our text move and land in this black area. I want it to be kind of like it's hitting water and interacting with water. So when it drops over the black solid, I want it to become a little bit weightless. Okay, cool. So I might just adjust the speed of the spin as well, because at the moment it is pretty fast. So yeah, it looks pretty crazy at the moment. Okay, so once the position is animated, I just want to work on the rotation. Yep, cool. Just going to rotate it a little bit. Make sure that you set a keyframe. Then it's going to rotate again this way, being carried by the black solid. So I want to make it look as though the black solid is like a wave. It's crashing in and then kind of takes it. So it's looking very basic at the moment, but for speed's sake, that will do. So I'm just going to keep it like that for the time being. Might just fix up a few little things, but that's what we're just going to try and work with today. Okay, cool. So the next step we're going to do really quickly is we're just going to change the opacity. So it's not viewable after a certain amount of frames. So we're just going to set the opacity to 100 and then go to the next frame and then set it to 0. So that just disappears. Okay, cool. Now what we're going to do is we're also going to quickly duplicate this layer, and I'm going to hit U just to bring up all the keyframes and just delete them. Now what I'm going to do with this one, with this text layer, is I'm going to make it black. I'm going to fast forward to when the white goes into the white solid, and I'm basically just going to grab the black, rotate it, and position it to where the white would be. Cool. Actually, I'm going to have it go the other way. So when it actually lands and starts to spin around, you'll actually be able to see it when it comes around. All right, so I'm just going to key the position, key the rotation, and I'm going to then have text come around there, circle around, and then flip back towards the solid again. So at the moment it is pretty crazy. So it is going way too fast. So we're just going to slow it out by just spacing out the keyframes. It's a pretty easy process. Whoop. Cool. And we just need to make sure that, that this is going into that area. Okay, cool. Slow it down a little bit, and now time to add to the rotation. So it comes in, we're going to adjust this rotation really quickly. We have it come in, kind of twist a little bit. Rotate again, maybe. And then have it go the other way. Let's see how this looks. Once again, I'm doing this very quickly, so I'm not going to probably get an amazing result. Let's just play that again. Let's drag this down here really quickly so I can just see what it looks like. Okay, it looks pretty terrible. So I might pause the video quickly here and just get it to what I think looks right, and then yeah, we'll go from there. Okay, so this is starting to look a little bit better. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to create a mask. So for this black text here, text layer just here, we're going to create a little mask so that when they intersect, you won't be able to see the white text anymore. So what we're just going to do is make sure that our black text is selected, go out to our pen tool, and just draw a claw across the black and white line. So at the moment it's getting rid of the bit that we actually want. So all we have to do is just go into the mask menu and just make sure it's inverted. Perfect. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to click on mask path and make sure that the stopwatch is selected so it can be animated. The reason why is because once we start playing through the frames, you can see how it's obviously just masking that one frame. Okay, so what we want to happen is for nothing to be visible until the white text crosses over. And then we want to move this back just to that line again. And then we'll just move this again. And that would probably do it. Okay, cool. Let's just see how this looks now. Make sure that the mask isn't selected. Okay, so that's what we have at the moment. So it looks pretty basic. The animation I'm still not happy with, but for speed's sake, perfect. We have our little example. So this is how we get just the base look, I guess. But to get the actual droplets and to get the really cool kind of colored background, we'll just have to do a few more other steps. So now that this is done, all we have to do now is export out this animation. So you can export it out as either a H.264 or an image sequence. But since we're transferring our file to AnimateCC, though AnimateCC can read both image sequence and H.264, I prefer to import it as a H.264 so that it doesn't import and save each frame down in the timeline, but it's up to you. I'll show you what I mean once I import it. So just quickly, we're just going to export this out. File, export. I'm just going to export it out as a using media encoder. Okay, so now that it has finished exporting, we're just going to open up AnimateCC. All right, cool. So this is a previous scene that I've already started working on. So to import the animation that we've just finished, we're going to just create a new one. And we're going to go to the general settings and set our settings to 1920 by 1080. Oop. 1080, and make the frame rate 25 frames a second. So exactly the same settings as our After Effects composition. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit import and go to import video. So this is where we're going to select our H.264. So here it says here, we can just select our video. So I'm just going to go to where I saved it. All right, and we'll go next. Cool. So the difference between importing it out as a image sequence and importing it as a H.264 is that as a H.264, it comes in as a whole file. So you can actually move this and it's not saved on an individual frame basis. So for speed's sake, I'm just going to be working on one that I've currently started, just to basically show you guys the process and just give you guys a little bit of a better understanding, I guess. So we have our main layer, which is going to be our base layer, that has our animation, which is our black and white text animation. Then we're going to create another layer, and this layer is going to be where we're going to be adding the droopy kind of effects to the actual text. So I'm going to create another layer, and I'm just going to hide the current layer that I have with the animation that I currently did. So when we scroll through, we can see it's just the animation that we've already completed. So it's just the text falling in and kind of spinning around. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to get to the first frame that actually has the text being kind of revealed, and we're going to create a keyframe. So to do this, just hit F7 on your keyboard. Okay, cool. So we're just going to go up here, select a brush, just make sure the brush is like a black color if you're working with these two colors. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create, I guess, the impact. If you've seen or watched reference footage of an item impacting a body of water, like a stone hitting the surface of a lake, you can see that in the first few frames when it actually impacts the water, you don't get crazy splashes or bubbles. You just get the main impact of the object on the surface of the water. Only once it starts to sink to the bottom do you get those nice flowing bubbles. So for the first 2 frames, I'm just going to treat it as such. In this case, after the 3rd to 4th frame, I'll start to use bubbles and water splashes. So for the first initial pose, I'll just create a really blocked out frame, and as I progress, I'll slowly start to add more elements. Something that I didn't add in my animation, but you can definitely add, is a splash from your object. If you would like to achieve this look, make sure that you take into consideration the weight you want your object to be. So the amount of water being sprayed and the height of the splashes should indicate the weight of your object. If it's a small droplet, then you don't need an overly large splash, but if it's a heavy object like a rock, then you need to make the splash larger. So we're just going to create a new frame, and we do this by hitting F7 again. by this frame we get to start getting a little bit more exciting. So we're still in the impact phase when the text is hitting the water. So we're still going to make it a little bit gloopy, but we're going to adjust it a little bit. So we're going to have some droplets and some air bubbles come out. So since we are working in 25 frames a second, every frame doesn't necessarily have to be like beautiful and perfect, because it's going by pretty quickly and water is very organic, so it doesn't have to look too precise. This is speaking from my own personal opinion. But in this example, since we're going to be using water and it is very malleable, you don't have to keep that same kind of structure. You can be a little bit more fluid, I guess. No puns intended. Okay, so we're just going to make sure that all these harsh edges are no longer there. I'm going to get rid of this. So it's still going to be extremely globby because this is the second frame of the impact. So we might even get rid of most of these little areas here. Keep it very basic. Looks like it's dragging down. Okay, cool. Now the text is sinking down, we can have some bubbles rise to the surface. One of the main things that we need to focus on when creating these bubbles is how the text is falling and what direction it's heading towards. This is so we can direct our bubbles or streams of water accordingly. You can see this when we play back the final animation. The bubbles flow from the droplet and morph and shrink as they follow the tail of the droplet. Once again, we don't have to be too careful with these bubbles. We can go back and redo them if you really want to, but for the time being, I'm just going to quickly scribble them in. So if you're wondering why they look pretty basic, it's just to get like an initial concept of what it actually looks like, how everything's flowing together, and if it looks terrible, it's okay. I can always go back and adjust it and change it. Okay, cool. So we have the initial bubbles kind of coming off, and basically all I have to do is just continue this process, have the bubbles repel, and then yeah, basically done with the process. So for speed's sake, I'm just going to turn off this layer and turn on the previous layer that I was working on. So you can see as it's being dropped into the water, I guess, there's that like stretchy kind of bubbles kind of appearing, and then it kind of bursts and you can see the bubbles rising from the text. For the time being, I'm just going to stop here and we're going to just use this. Awesome. So what I'm just going to do is, probably just to start off with, I'm just going to delete these extra layers because we don't need them anymore. And yeah, so all we really need is this. As silly as it looks, that's all we need. So there's additional frames here that we probably don't need. So I'm just going to highlight the ones that I don't need and just go to remove frames. So it only has these 6. Now, we're just going to go File, Export, and we're going to export movie. And we're going to export it out as a PNG sequence. Cool, awesome. So all we'd have to do is press save. 1920 by 1080. We already know it's 25 frames a second because that's what we set our main settings up to be, and we'll just go export. Done. So it's not going to be too difficult because it is only 5 frames, so that's probably why it was pretty quick. And now we're going to import our file that we just exported. So here we have our PNG sequence. So I'm just going to import it and press play really quickly. All right, cool. Looks a little bit silly at the moment. Yeah. All right, but that's exactly what we want. So now we're going to go to our composition that has our just black and white text. Since I used a different example, I'm just going to grab this one instead. And what I'm going to do is I'm go into this setting and go into this composition and drag and drop this on the top. Perfect. That's better. Okay, cool. That's starting to look pretty nice. So I'm just going to trim it down for the time being, and okay, probably not that much. That's probably a little bit too intense. There we go, that'll do. And we're going to select all of our layers, and we're just going to Control-Shift-C just to create a pre-comp, and we're going to name this text tutorial. Cool. All right, awesome. So here we have our splash kind of text. So now we're up to the final stage. So now that we've made our black and white kind of animation, we've added our 2D element, it's time to add some really cool backgrounds to it. So this is really simple to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new solid, and we can make it whatever color we want it to be. So I might make mine probably like a greeny bluey kind of color. Yep. We are going to then make sure toggle and switches modes has been turned on. Awesome. And we're just going to drag it below our example. Awesome. We're going to make it a Luma inverted matte. So we get to change whatever color this is. So we can change it to something else if we don't really like this color. I personally like this color for this time being, so I'm going to create a new solid, and this one's going to be like a purplish kind of color. These could clash and look absolutely terrible, but I'm just going to go with it anyway. Okay, cool. Yeah, that looks pretty disgusting. All right, perfect. So now when we play it, different colors, cool. So we also want to change the colors. In this purple, disgusting purple color, we're going to go into the effects panel. So you can't see it, should be here, effects and presets. And we're going to type in fill. And we're just going to drag and drop it onto our purple layer. And this is just going to give it a base color. So at the moment it's red. We probably don't want that red. Probably want it something better than that purplish kind of color. Let's just go with a bluish kind of color. That will do. And what we can do now is we can actually change the colors. So all we have to do is just hit the stopwatch. So we can actually animate it, which is always fun. So I'm just going to go down, select the layer and hit U on the keyboard so we can see our keyframes. And let's adjust this to maybe a darker blue, and maybe, no, not a green, that looks terrible. Maybe like a pink even. Oh, that looks even worse. That'll do, yep, cool. And then we'll have it go back to its original color at the beginning. Cool. So it changes colors as it kind of goes around. Now this is very dramatic and very kind of crazy looking at the moment, but that was basically it. That's the whole entire technique. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it and if you guys enjoy it. And yeah, that's basically how I created this animation, and I hope you enjoyed it. For any additional tutorials, just check out the Zilluette website. Thanks again.